Hello and welcome to our webinar on IA Connect. My name's Amin Jaffa and I work for Ultima. I run a division within Ultima called Ultima Labs, which is responsible for the development of IA Connect. What I want to do today is take you through some of the common automation challenges that we've seen out there. As an RPA delivery organization, we came across some of these challenges very early on in our journey of delivering our RPA to our clients. I'm going to take you through what IA Connect is and how it addresses those challenges, and then I'm going to give you a bit of an overview as to how it all hangs together and how it works. So like I said, as an RPA delivery company, we came across very early on some of the challenges. Actually, we partnered with an organization called Thoughtonomy, which has subsequently become BluePrism Cloud. And Thoughtonomy is a SaaS-based platform which enables organizations to consume RPA from a SaaS-based model. But it's based on BluePrism. And what we found very early on is a lot of customers were very keen on moving down the route of RPA in the cloud. Those organizations with cloud-first strategies and a vision for the way they want their infrastructure to go. However, the challenges of that soon became very, very real in terms of the list of onboarding steps was extensive. We would end up having to jump through many, many hoops, which I'll illustrate on some subsequent slides, and get various teams within the organization, especially IT teams, involved and bought into the concepts. And that would be the bigger challenge when it comes to setting up VPNs and joining virtual workers to the domain, etc. And actually, one of the significant challenges as part of that onboarding was the security side of it. Now, again, these are cloud-based virtual workers that are connected to on-prem systems, and invariably InfoSec teams would get involved and would immediately shut it down and say we can't do this. Mainly around the fact that we've got external machines, external servers that are trying to connect to on-prem systems through VPNs and would effectively have access to very, very sensitive systems on-prem. And the final one of these challenges is surface automation, which many people have heard of. Many people, especially RPA developers, are very familiar with image-based automation and the challenges around it. These challenges are effectively born out of the fact that when RPA is interacting with in a native manner, it would have the applications installed locally on the virtual worker. It would be using those applications natively. It would be interacting with those applications. But as soon as you ask it to go through a Citrix session or a Microsoft RDS session, instead of having access to those applications to interact with them directly, the RPA robot is now presented with a screen, which is effectively a bunch of pixels and images that it needs to interact with and figure out what's going on the screen. Now, this is a major challenge for RPA solutions in general. And actually leads to up to 3 to 4 times the development time of a normal automation, because of the fact that you're essentially screen scraping and trying to tell the software robot where on the screen to find certain objects, telling the software robot to click on certain buttons, and comparing what's coming back and the outputs with what we're expecting the outputs to be, and all of that rounded together leads to a lot more intricacy when it comes to development. And then, as you can imagine, off the back of that, once you've developed those processes, if anything changes on the screen, then we start to see issues with the software robot or the process not knowing what's changed and therefore falling over. So processes are much, much more prone to error than they would be if it was a native automation. So Ultima started developing IA Connect about 18 months ago, purely to address the challenges that I went through on the previous slides. And throughout the last 18 months, we've been constantly updating IA Connect to include features and functionality, and we're in a constant development cycle as we go forward as well. But hopefully, over the next couple of slides, I'll give you a bit of an understanding as to how IA Connect can address some of those challenges that we talked about. So just for a moment, taking a step back and looking at the onboarding and security challenges. So on here, on this screen, as you'll see it building out, you'll see some of the steps. Actually, these are the steps that we'd go through to onboard a virtual worker to a customer so that we can get to a point where we can just start developing the automation. So we haven't even started developing the automation yet, but these are the steps that we'd undertake. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to point out a few of these. Joining a virtual worker to the domain, configuring group policies, setting up firewalls, firewall rules. All of these are technically not very difficult to do, and take a relatively short amount of time to do. But actually, behind the scenes, the number of conversations, the number of teams we need to get involved can lengthen that significantly. And we'd normally see that onboarding process taking between 3 to 6 months of conversations. Now that's 3 to 6 months of increase in sales cycle, increase in implementation, also increasing cost with the number of people that need to get involved in these conversations and move this forward. So now when we talk to customers and we introduce IA Connect, all we're asking for is simply a connection to their existing Citrix or RDS infrastructure, as they would provision to any other remote user that they have. We're then able to deploy IA Connect within that session, and then we can start using IA Connect to begin the development. So we're talking about near instant onboarding as opposed to between 3 to 6 months of talking through these onboarding steps. And just to touch on the same with surface automation, for those of you who might not be familiar with surface automation or not familiar with the challenges of it, in this slide, we're just going to use a scenario of using surface automation to automate Excel, which is hosted through Citrix. Now, in the real world, you probably wouldn't automate Excel using surface automation, but actually this is a really good illustration of applications that might have table-based user interfaces, etc., and it helps to illustrate the challenges that are associated with surface automation. So in this scenario, we're trying to automate Excel. We're trying to, let's for example, extract the contents of cell G3 from this Excel spreadsheet. At this point, we would need to, in a surface automation scenario, we'd need to tell the robot to try and locate cell G3, and to do that, we'd probably use key presses to move down and across until we think we're in the right place, and then we'd extract the information from that. But there's clear challenges with doing that. That Excel column could be hidden. It could be that the column has been resized, and therefore all the information within that cell isn't actually available on the screen. It could be that the data that we're looking for is off the screen completely, or the application is minimized, in which case surface automation would completely fall over, the same as any other image-based automation or computer vision. And even if we do find the cell that we want and we manage to extract the information from that cell, that extraction is essentially an image that we then potentially have to overlay with OCR to turn that image into some meaningful text to use as part of the process. So just to illustrate some of the challenges associated with surface automation. Now, in our scenario where we're introducing IA Connect to do the heavy lifting, we're actually able to interact with those applications as if that application was native to the virtual worker. So we're not using any kind of image-based automation, we're not using surface automation, we're not using computer vision. We are interacting with the applications natively, even though they're on the other end of a Citrix session. And by doing that, in this scenario, we would just be saying to Excel, give me the contents of cell G3, and Excel would return that, and we would use that as part of the process. So moving on to just a simple slide which shows you how it kind of hangs together and what the moving parts are. This is very high level, of course. So if you want more technical detail, then we can absolutely provide that. But essentially, you've got your standard virtual worker. That could be a BluePrism worker that's on-prem or hosted in the customer's tenant, cloud tenant. And then you've got BluePrism Cloud, which is, as I mentioned earlier, the SaaS version of it. And what we're trying to do is get to these applications which are hosted on Citrix or Microsoft RDS. And those applications could be Office applications, they could be a web app, they could be a Win32 app. But to get to those applications, traditionally we'd be using surface automation to be able to interact with them and automate them. Instead of that, what we do is we install what we call IA Connect Director onto the virtual worker alongside the Citrix or RDS client. And this director is essentially responsible for passing information back and forth from BluePrism to the IA Connect agent, which sits on the Citrix or RDS side of this. So that IA Connect agent, it's worth pointing out, is a standalone executable. We've made it as light touch, zero touch as possible. We don't require that to be installed. We don't require it to be placed on every Citrix or RDS server that we want to interact with. It's a standalone executable that just needs to reside on a network share within the environment that we're trying to automate. So we could put that on a network share as long as it's accessible by the Citrix session or the RDS session. We're then able to run it, and once we've run it, we can then build this virtual channel between the IA Connect director and the IA Connect agent. So just to reiterate that, on the Citrix end, where the applications are, we don't require any kind of installation. We don't require any admin privileges whatsoever. We just need that standard user executable to be placed on a network share that we can get access to from the Citrix environment. Once we've established that virtual channel, IA Connect Director then initiates communication with the agent, sends commands back and forth, and IA Connect agent is then responsible for processing the instructions on the applications at the Citrix end. Now, just to give you a little bit of information for those of you who aren't too familiar with Citrix or RDS, the virtual channels that we're using to pass this communication back and forth are the same virtual channels that are built into Citrix or RDS. So we're not asking for extra connectivity, we're not asking for extra firewall ports to be opened or anything else. We're using the standard connectivity used by Citrix or RDS, which is typically used for passing those screen images back and forth or passing mouse clicks or key presses back and forth. We're using the exact same virtual channels and connectivity for IA Connect. So I hope you found that interesting. We obviously can provide a lot more information on our website at ultima.com. There's a link to Ultima Labs. Within there, you can find a web demo that you can run through, you can have a look at, but also there's the opportunity to download a free trial for yourselves or for any other customers or partners, and hopefully you find that useful too. Thank you very much for listening.
This is Simon Bond from Ultima Business Solutions. I'm the lead developer of the IA Connect software, which allows you to perform automations over Citrix and Microsoft RDS sessions. Today I'm going to show you how to automate a Windows application in a remote Citrix session using the BluePrism Studio and IA Connect. IA Connect takes the actions issued from BluePrism and sends them over the remote desktop channel to an IA Connect agent, which is running on the remote desktop. For this demo, I'm going to manually connect to a Citrix desktop using the Citrix Storefront webpage. I also have a blank object open in the BluePrism Studio where I'll be creating my automation. Now I'm going to launch a desktop for this demo. Published applications are also supported by IA Connect. So now the desktop is loaded and you can see the IA Connect agent running in the remote Citrix session. This agent does not need to be installed. It is a standalone exe which can be placed on a network share or home drive. I also have a door entry tool which I'm going to automate. Now the inspector for IA Connect is running in a web page on the BluePrism worker. It's part of the IA Connect installation. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the path to the door entry tool that I wish to run, paste it into the application window here and hit run program. And you can see that the program runs in the remote session. It's highlighted by IA Connect and it's found the main window. So having successfully launched, I wish to copy this to BluePrism. So I click copy to BluePrism and that gives me something that I can paste into the BluePrism Studio. This run process action has the details of the program I wish to launch, and it provides the process ID of the process which just ran. This is very similar to attaching to a process in BluePrism. So now I've launched it, I want to wait for this window to appear that's shown here in this table. So I hit the down arrow and I choose wait for desktop element. Again, I copy to BluePrism and paste it into the studio. This is very much like a wait stage in BluePrism. So I've launched the program. I now want to wait for a window to appear. And now I'm going to step into the window and have a look at what makes up the window. And you can see here that the window is made up of three parts, the title bar, a panel, and I'm going to step in now and have a closer look at the panel. And the panel, as you can see, contains the username field, which is the field that I wish to use. So I want to choose input text because I want to test inputting text into the element. Now I can do it live here from the inspector. So I've entered operator, and I've clicked perform action, and you can see it has entered into the tool. So I've clicked copy to BluePrism, and I'm pasting it into the BluePrism Studio. And you can see the details of the object that I'm entering into and the words that I'm going to enter, which is operator in this case. Now I'm going to go back to the studio and I'm going to enter into the password field. So the first one's a label, but the second one is the password field. And I'm going to choose input password, enter the password, perform the action to make sure it works, which it does. Click copy to BluePrism and paste it into the studio. Now I have three objects here. The middle one is the actual data item that contains the password, and a note to remind you that you probably want to load that password from a BluePrism credential rather than hard coding the password. Just for this demo, I'm going to enter the password into the password field. And I'm going to link up all those objects that have been created. So now I want to hit the OK button, so identify it, and you can see it's highlighted. So I'm going to choose to press element, perform an action to make sure it works, and copy to BluePrism. So again, this will paste in an action which would press the button for me. So now I've done that, and I have a new window that's appeared, which is the main door entry tool. So I'm going to hit Get Desktop Elements to refresh the display because the old window's gone. It's been replaced by a new one. If I hit Identify, you can see the new window has now been identified. And again, I wish to wait for this window, just another wait stage. I'll copy this to BluePrism because once I've hit OK, the window might not immediately appear. So effectively I'm saying press OK and wait for the main window to appear. Now those first three, which was inputting text and pressing OK, are all relative to that first handle, to that first window. This new wait gives me a new handle, which says element handle 3, which is the handle for the main window rather than the handle for the login window. Okay, so there's two elements. I'm going to step into the one that clearly holds all the buttons. And if you see me hitting identify, I can work out which is the button I want to press, which is new user. So I'm going to do a global left click on this button because this button wants there to be a mouse over event. And I hit perform action and I can see that that works. So again, I will paste that into the BluePrism Studio, wire it all up. And you can see that the new window's appeared. This is this add new user window. So I'm going to step back up and there's the add new user window. And again, it's highlighted. And as before, the first thing you'd want to do is wait for it to appear. Again, another wait stage because this is the third window that has appeared. Actually, I'm going to do wait for element because it's a child of the other window. So waiting for this new element that's appeared. And again, I get another element handle. This time it's a handle for the new window that's appeared, the add new user window. And everything now is going to be relative to that handle. So I'll step in and have a closer look at the window, and I can see it's made up again of two items, the main window and the title bar. So I'll step into the main window, and there are all the elements that are inside that window. The first one being the text box that I wish to enter details into, and just like before, I'll go input text, test some sample input, that works, copy it to BluePrism, paste it in, and now I'll just continue to identify the four windows that I wish to input text into. Quickly test it, copy to BluePrism. You can see how quickly you can find each window and create input text actions. So this is the third window, the age window, and the last one will be the gender window. Remember, you can hit identify against every one just to check that you have found the right element. Sometimes the names are so obvious you don't have to bother with identify. Identify is purely there for you just to confirm to yourself that you found the right window. Okay, so the next one is a checkbox. So I'm going to give Jimi Hendrix access to Gainsborough House. So this one, there we go, identify, you can see it says checkbox Gainsborough House. Now I've got a choice of check element or uncheck element. So check element is the obviously the one I want to do here. Hit perform action and see it works. Copy it into BluePrism. And now I wish to input an image, because you can see that submit button is grayed out and it won't be available until I provide an image. So this looks like it's text box image file name, this one here. So have a look, yes, that's the one. So I will choose to input some text. Now there's a sample image that comes with the door entry tool, but you could use any of your own. So I'll use the smiley face one. The clipboard's disabled, so I'm manually pasting in the path. I can hit perform action to make sure it goes in, then copy to BluePrism, paste that in. And the last thing I want to do is submit. So press the submit button. So there's the submit button. Again, I can identify it to make sure it's there. I'll choose to left click on the element, perform the action to make sure it works. And you can see I've got a message that says that it's been successful. So I'll copy that stage to BluePrism and paste it in. Now, I think for this demo, that's probably enough to give you a flavor for how the inspector works and how you can copy items to BluePrism. So I'm just going to close down the application that I've just gone through manually here. I'm going to wire up all of the actions that are in the BluePrism Studio, and we will run through and confirm that this all works. Okay, so I'm just going to step through each one just to make sure they work. So run the process, wait for the window, input text into that window that was found, wait for the new window, click on the left-hand button, wait for the new window, input text into this third window that has appeared, check the first checkbox, input the path to the image, press the submit button. There we go.